Welcome to Play With Me, Unmatched Adventures, Tales to Amaze. This video is intended to help you get started quickly by playing along as you watch the video. The Tales to Amaze booklet has the instructions for this game and how to play this cooperative version. The set rules talk specifically about the heroes that come with this game, and the core rules give you the rules for playing Unmatched in general. After you remove the game board, each of the heroes has a special container, and the enemy cards are in this section. There are several gameplay items that you might want to know about. That is the Alien and Doom tokens, the bridge tokens, the initiative cards, and the player cards, as well as the amazing event cards. Now there is enough space for them to all fit underneath the enemy cards in this section. However, as an alternative, you may want to put only the amazing event and initiative cards in this area and put the remaining items underneath the Anti-Christmas and Golden Bat cards. So in this approach, underneath Anti-Christmas, we can place the Doom and Alien tokens right here. And then underneath the Golden Bat cards and the dial, we can keep the player cards and the bridge cards. Okay, so let's talk about the setup. Of course, the first thing that you need to do is get out the game board, but this game board is two-sided. The easier side is the Mothman side. The more challenging side is the Martian Invader side. On the Martian Invader side, you will be fighting against the Martians as they place aliens in the fields. On the Mothman side, you will be fighting against Mothman, who is seeking to destroy bridges using Doom tokens. So first choose a side and place it in the middle of the table. Place the threat marker in the leftmost space above number 1. The board you choose determines the villain that you will face, so get out their action cards and shuffle them up to create a draw deck, and then also get out the health meter and set it to 10 for each hero that you will be using. Finally, get out the villain figure and place it on the space marked 5. Each side of the board has 5 starting spaces that are marked with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The spaces are in the same general orientation on the Martian Invader side. To continue the setup, it's helpful to know about the initiative cards that are kept in this part of the box. The initiative cards determine the order in which enemies and heroes activate. So the initiative cards have 1 for each villain, so there's the Mothman and the Martian Invader, plus they have 1 for each player or hero. Then we have 6 minions that also have tokens associated with them. Finally, there's a number of special initiative cards. The Martian Invasion Wave cards are for the Martian Invader mission. And there's also some Loveland Frog Strikes Again cards and Ant Queen Strange Pheromone cards. These are kept out and will be added to the initiative deck as the game plays. So in the part of the setup that we're at, we want to choose minions. So you want to choose 1 minion for each hero that will be playing. And an easy way, if you want to randomly select your minion, is to get out the initiative cards for each of the minions, shuffle them up, and then randomly select a minion for each player. Now in this walkthrough, we're going to use the Ant Queen minion, and we will pull out the Ant Queen Strange Pheromone cards and put them to the side. Now you can get whatever minions and heroes that you want, but in order to play through this video, get out the Ant Queen minion and we will get Anti-Christmas for the hero. Now that you've selected your minions, get out the action cards associated with each minion, shuffle them up and create a draw deck. Also get out the health meter and set it to 10. Not 10 per player, just 10 because you'll have 1 minion for each player. The minion health dials are located in the box underneath Mothman and underneath the Martian Invader. So there's a whole stack of the health dials here. During gameplay, you will have a discard pile for each stack of action cards. So one way you can lay things out is put the health meter right above the draw deck for each of the enemies. The next thing you'll do is you'll get the token associated with the minions that are playing and place them in a space that's adjacent to the main villain. Adjacent means it's connected by a line. So for example, in this case, even though these spaces are very near to each other, they're not connected by a line, and so therefore they're not adjacent. The tarantula and blob minions have special tokens. So for the tarantula, you would get out the web tokens, and for the blob, you would get out the blob tokens. A good place that those tokens are kept is in this section of the box. In this walkthrough, we won't be using the blob and the tarantula, but I'll tell you how the tokens work. The web and blob tokens only affect heroes and their sidekicks. They do not affect the villains or the minions. If a hero or sidekick moves onto a space with a web token, they must stop their movement there, but they don't take any special damage. If a hero or sidekick is already on a web space and another hero or sidekick passes through that location, they do not have to stop their movement. Even if a hero or sidekick needs to stop their movement by landing on the web, they can use another action to move off of that web. If a sidekick or hero moves onto a blob token, they will take 1 damage, but they do not have to stop their movement. If a sidekick or hero moves through a space with a blob token, if there's already a hero or sidekick there, they do not take damage. We've already placed our minion token. The next step in the setup is to choose your hero. The set rules describe the different heroes, so you might want to read through that in choosing your hero. But for this walkthrough video, we're going to choose Annie Christmas because Annie Christmas has a sidekick. The hero sections are very well organized in the box. For example, for Annie Christmas, the cards are on top, and underneath is the health dial for Annie Christmas. And underneath that is the health dial for Charlie, the sidekick, and there is the token for Charlie, the sidekick. Once you've chosen your hero, you'll need to place your hero on one of the starting spaces. Remember, they are numbered and distributed on the board. So we will place Annie Christmas on this starting space number 2. The core rules describe how to set up for each particular hero. If a hero has a sidekick, the sidekick can be placed in any space that shares the same zone as the hero. Now, zones are determined by the colors of the spaces, even if they're multicolored. So, for example, Annie Christmas in the starting space 2 has this maroon colored space. So it shares this space in the same zone, this space in the same zone, as well as these others. So Charlie can be placed in any one of these spaces. We'll place Charlie right here. The next thing that we'll do is we'll get out the cards for Annie Christmas and shuffle them up, but we'll notice that one of these cards is the character card. So we'll pull that card out as a reference and then shuffle the others to create a draw deck. So let's take a look at the card and see if we can understand it a little bit. First of all, heroes and sidekicks can have an associated attack type, a melee or ranged. Melee means that you must be adjacent to the enemy to attack it. Now, they don't have to be in the same zone, they just need to be connected by a line. For a ranged attack, you can be adjacent, even if they're on different zones, or you can attack anyone within the same zone. In addition, the hero and the sidekick have health shown here. So Annie Christmas starts with 14 health, and Charlie starts with 8 health. Each hero has a special ability, and it's described here, and each hero and sidekick share the same amount of movement as described here on the card. An interesting point to be aware of in the game is that if a hero, if they choose to move, then both the hero and their sidekicks can move. So now we can go ahead and set Annie's health meter to 14 and Charlie's to 8. After we've shuffled the cards, we draw 5 for our starting hand. Next, you'll take a player token with the number associated with the starting space. So if Annie Christmas starts on space 2, they take player 2. And if Tesla is starting on space 3, they take player 3. Next, we'll get out the initiative cards. So we'll have one initiative card for the villain and one for each minion, plus one for each player. In this particular case, in this walkthrough, we're just going to use one minion, the Ant Queen, and one hero who's at player 2 space. We also, because we're using the Ant Queen, would get out any special cards associated with the minions. So we were getting out the Ant Queen's Strange Pheromone cards. Now these will be put to the side, and the other 3 will be shuffled together to form a draw deck. The final step in the setup is to do the additional steps based upon the board that we're using and any amazing events that we want to use. When battling Mothman, there are 4 bridge tokens that we need to get out. On the Mothman board, there are 4 bridge spaces. Bridge 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're not connected by lines because the bridges will cause those lines. So you shuffle up your tokens and randomly place a token on each of the bridge spaces. Finally, place one Doom token on bridge number 1. The Doom tokens have double-sided tokens, so on one side has red eyes and the other side has green eyes. It doesn't matter which side you use, but thematically the red eyes work well with Mothman. Finally, the amazing event cards are used to make the scenarios more difficult. Shuffle them and draw between 1 and 3 and place them face up next to the board. They have effects that will take effect throughout the entire game. Some combinations are more difficult than others, so that you can adjust the difficulty by choosing the effects that you want to have happen. Most of this video is going to focus on the Mothman side of the board, but if you wanted to focus on Martian Invaders, here's some things to know about. Here's the additional setup if you're playing on the Martian Invader side. Of course, instead of using Mothman villain, you'll be using the Martian Invader villain. You'll also get out the Martian and Invasion Wave Initiative cards and select the number of cards equal to the number of players. So if I have 1 player, I only take Wave 1. If I have 3 players, I take Wave 1, 2, and 3. From the start, go ahead and take those cards and shuffle them in with the villain, minion, and player cards. And that will form your initiative draw deck. You will of course be using the Martian Invader action cards instead of the Mothman action cards, and the Martian Invader health dial instead of the Mothman health dial. Of course you'll be using the Martian villain as well as the alien tokens, and you can use the green side up. Finally, there are 4 alien invasion tokens that are stored in this area. Shuffle them and randomly place them with the alien face up in this area of the board. Any field that has at least 1 alien token is considered occupied. If any effect would place an alien token, say in a field, and you've run out of alien tokens, you advance the threat marker 1 for each alien that cannot be placed. When a player completes a maneuver action, they can remove 1 alien from a field that borders a space that any of their fighters is on, even if they don't move. If there's more than 1 field containing aliens that border the space that a fighter is on, you can still only remove 1 alien, and you choose which one. Whenever the threat marker reaches the advanced invasion space, then flip over the leftmost token face up. If any of the cards has a symbol that matches a face-up symbol, resolve that effect as you would normally. The Martian Invader wins if they have completed their mission 4 times such that all the symbols are face-up. Now it's time to play the game. In this video, I'll walk through some game scenario examples so that you can see them, and then stop the video and play them yourself to get used to the mechanics. The first thing that we should notice is on the back of your hero card is a reference card that shows you exactly what you do on your turn. You must take 2 actions, and those actions can be attack, scheme, or maneuver. And when you do a maneuver, you must draw a card. We'll go over these in more detail as we walk through examples. The turn order is determined by the initiative deck. For our first example, recall that this is the setup for the enemies and heroes. We draw the first initiative card, and it's Mothman. Notice at the top we have a right now action, and that's what happens as soon as you flip over the card. Mothman takes his turn. Notice here that the movement for the villains and the minions is shown on the card. So Mothman has a movement of 3. Unlike heroes, villains will always do the same thing of move if they need and then attack once. So in this case, Mothman is not adjacent to any of the heroes or sidekicks, so he needs to move. He has 3 movement, and he can reach both the hero and the sidekick within those 3 moves. He will always take the shortest path possible to attack a hero or sidekick, and if there's a tie, the players decide. So in this scenario, Mothman can move here with 3 moves or move here for 3 moves. So we'll decide to have him go there. By the way, we're not trying to show the strategically best approaches. We're just going to show you how things work mechanically. Since both the sidekick and the hero are the same distance from Mothman, the players will decide who the Mothman will attack. In this case, we'll choose to allow Mothman to attack Annie Christmas. And part of that reason is because if her health is lower than the villain, she can actually increase her attack. So since Mothman is attacking, we have to decide if we actually want to defend against the attack. So let's assume that we do. For this example, let's assume that Annie's starting 5 cards are the Turn in the River, A Few More Pearls, Bottom Dealing, Keep Your Hands to Yourself, and Slick Talker. You might want to get these cards out to follow along with the video. Pause the video wherever you need so you can practice and become familiar with the mechanisms. Each of the action cards will have in the upper left the kind of action that you can do and the name of the character or figure that can use it. The Turn in the River can be used only by Charlie, but it can be used for attack or defense. A Few More Pearls is a scheme action that can only be used by Annie. The Bottom Dealing is an attack action that can only be used by Charlie. Keep Your Hands to Yourself is a defense or attack that can only be used by Annie. And Slick Talker is a defense that can be used by either Charlie or Annie. So for defense, the only cards that Annie can use would be Keep Your Hands to Yourself or Slick Talker. Slick Talker, it has a special effect that allows Annie and Charlie to swap places, and then Charlie would become the defender. But we don't want to do that, so we will use Keep Your Hands to Yourself. Normally during Unmatched, both opponents place their cards face down, and then you reveal them at the same time. For the villain or minion's action cards, you always draw that card off the top of the deck. Since this is a cooperative game, you can just place the player's card down first and then turn over the top card of the villain or minion deck to see what they have. In this particular case, Mothman is attacking with 4 with the Unimaginable Terror, and Annie is defending with 3. Now we also check the effects section. Cards can have effects of immediately, during combat, and after combat. There are no immediate effects or during combat effects, so we resolve the combat first. So we subtract the defense from the attack, and Annie takes 1 hit. So of course we remove 1 health from her health counter. Now we resolve the after combat effects. Now, since after combat happens in both cases, we resolve the defender first. If we notice here, the Mothman will deal damage to each adjacent opposing fighter. So we don't want Charlie or Annie close to Mothman when that happens. So notice that Annie has the after combat of moving each fighter in the combat up to 2 spaces. So we don't want Charlie or Annie next to Mothman. But she cannot move Charlie because he wasn't in the fight. But Mothman is a fighter, even though he's not a hero. So we will just move Mothman up to 2 spaces away. 1, 2. And we want to move Mothman so that he's in the same zone as Charlie because Charlie has range and we would like Charlie to be able to attack Mothman. We'll leave Annie where she is. Mothman's effect says deal 1 damage to each adjacent opposing fighter For each fighter damaged this way, add a Doom token to the lowest numbered bridge. Fortunately, there are no heroes or sidekicks next to Mothman. So now we've placed the Mothman card in the Mothman discard section and Annie's card in Annie's discard section. And that concludes Mothman's turn. The end of round is done later, so the next thing we do is just flip over another initiative card. We'll place it next to the previous card because we will resolve the end of round effects in order. Now it's player 2's turn to go. That's Annie and Charlie. Annie used one of her cards in defense, so there's only 4 of them left. Using the reference card, we see that we must take 2 actions. Annie is a melee character, and she's not next to any enemies, so she cannot attack without moving. However, Charlie is ranged, and he's in the same section as Mothman. In addition, Charlie has an attack card. He has, in fact, 2 attack cards. This one that can be used for attack or defense, or bottom dealing, which is used only for attack. In Tales to Amaze, you do run out of cards quickly because there is no draw a card type of action. So this particular card, the Turn and the River, allows you to draw 2 cards, so that's a great one to use. But we only attack for 2. With bottom dealing, we can attack for 3, but you can also reveal the bottom card and use its boost value, shown here in the mid-right, and add that to the attack. Since we want to do as much damage as possible to Mothman, let's play this card. So we place down bottom dealing and flip over the top card of Mothman. It's a feign and it has an immediate effect. This effect cancels all effects on the opponent's card, so we can't use the during combat effect. As a result, during this attack, Charlie only attacks with 3 and the feint defends with 2. So Charlie does 1 point of damage to Mothman. Now Annie and Charlie have to perform a second action. We could do, for a few more pearls, Charlie could actually try to attack again, but we'll choose to maneuver because using these other cards runs out of cards quickly. But when you maneuver, you will gain a card because the first step is to draw a card. So in this case, suppose that you draw Striking Beauty, you'll add that to your hand. And even though we're technically maneuvering, we're going to leave Charlie and Annie here because we would like Charlie still to be able to attack Mothman, and we can't really run away from Mothman because we're in that corner, and we don't want the Ant Queen to get closer to us to attack us. So that concludes player 2's turn. So now we flip over the next initiative card, and of course it's the Ant Queen. So the Ant Queen takes her turn. She gets to move 3 and then attack. Since the Ant Queen is not adjacent to any of her enemies, she will have to move, but she's not close enough to actually reach any of them. So if a minion or villain cannot actually move close enough to a hero or sidekick, in other words, reach their target, they move the threat marker 1 space. And that concludes their turn. Now that all the initiative cards have been flipped over, we've reached the end of the round, so we apply the end of round effects at the bottom of the cards from left to right. So for Mothman, he advances the threat marker the number of spaces equal to 1 plus the number of Doom tokens on the lowest numbered bridge. Since there's 1 Doom token on the bridge number 1, we advance the marker 2 spaces. There is no end of round effect for the players, but for the Ant Queen, we advance the threat marker 1 space. Then if the threat level is 3 or higher, we add a random Strange Pheromone initiative card to the initiative deck before I reshuffle. So we advance the threat marker, and the numbers underneath the threat track are the levels. So we are at level 4, so we do need to add a Strange Pheromone card. The effects of each of the Strange Pheromone cards are different, so we want to shuffle them and select one. We'll then add that to the rest of the initiative cards, shuffle them up, place them down for the next draw pile. Let's now continue with round 2, but modify a few things just to illustrate a few points. In particular, notice that bridge 1 we've set to the covered bridge with 2 Doom tokens. Annie still has a health of 13, but let's just say that she only has 2 cards, a few more pearls, and Striking Beauty. And of course, we're assuming that the initiative card has been drawn for player 2, so Annie gets to go. For the first action, Annie's going to move, so the first thing that she has to do is to draw a card. And she draws Mississippi Queen. Whenever a player is doing a maneuver action, they may boost their movement by discarding 1 card and adding the boost value to their movement value. You boost your value before moving, and both heroes and sidekicks can use that boosted value. Annie will discard the Mississippi Queen. That has a boost value of 3. So now Annie and Charlie could both move a total of 5 spaces. Now we're ready to move Annie and Charlie. So Annie can move 5 spaces, but she only needs to move 2 in order to get adjacent to Mothman. She could go here or here, but we'll just place her right there. Charlie, on the other hand, we want to move him 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in order for him to get next to the covered bridge. Notice that he can move through friendly spaces. On page 12, we see that after a player completes a maneuver action, they may discard a card to activate a bridge that one of their fighters is adjacent to. Since Charlie is next to the covered bridge with the Doom tokens, we will activate that bridge. Whenever we activate a bridge, we trigger the effect on the bridge and we're able to remove Doom tokens equal to the boost value of the discarded card. Annie chooses to discard Striking Beauty. Notice that it has a boost value of 3. Annie has lost some health, so she will receive the health from recovering the 3 health, and we will remove both Doom tokens because the card that we discarded had a boost value of 3. Annie only needs to recover 1 health, but that's better than nothing. Now we do have one more action that we must perform, but unfortunately we don't have any cards that allow Charlie to attack. However, we do have a scheme that Annie can play. A Few More Pearls scheme allows Annie to deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to Annie. And so this is not an attack, so we do not draw an action card from Mothman to defend against it. So Annie does 2 automatic damage to Mothman. But unfortunately, we've used the last of the cards in Annie's hand. Now we draw the next card from the initiative deck, and it's Mothman, so it's his turn to go. Since Mothman is adjacent to Annie Christmas, he will attack Annie Christmas without moving. Since Annie doesn't have any cards to defend with, we will simply turn over the top card from the Mothman action deck. It's a Mothman is a Hoax, the Deception card. All villains and minions have a Deception card. Whenever that card shows up, you need to take it with the discards and shuffle them all together with the draw deck. This essentially refreshes the draw deck and means that you'll never run out of cards from the draw deck. Fortunately, it also means that Annie Christmas doesn't take any damage even though she couldn't defend against the attack. Let's now advance to the end of the round to show what can happen to the threat track. Let's modify the scenario a little bit again in order to show what happens when the track marker reaches the last space. We'll make sure that we have 3 Doom tokens on the bridge number 1. The bridge type doesn't matter. In this case, it's the suspension bridge. And the track marker is on the highest level 4. So the first effect that we have to trigger is Mothman's effect, and that is to add threats equal to the number of Doom tokens on the lowest bridge plus 1. Since there are 3 Doom tokens on bridge number 1, we will advance the threat tracker by 4. 1, 2, 3. Now we don't have any more to go, so we just ignore the remaining steps. However, we have reached the destroy a bridge space, and so we will destroy the lowest number bridge, which happens to be bridge number 1. To do that, we first move all the Doom tokens from bridge number 1 to the next lowest bridge, bridge number 2. Next, we flip over the bridge token to the destroyed bridge side and place it on the next empty space in the destroyed bridge area. Notice that these spaces are no longer adjacent. Next, we resolve the actions underneath the destroyed bridge. There's always 2 of those actions. So in this case, we would place Mothman adjacent to the hero with lowest health, which happens to be Charlie this time, and the players choose which space that they place Mothman in if there's more than 1 space. Then each player discards a card. If there's no card to discard, then you just skip that step. Finally, we move the tracker token back to the first space on the track. Then we continue resolving the end of round effects on the initiative cards, picking up where we left off. Notice that for the Ant Queen, we do advance the threat marker. So even though we reach the end with Mothman, we've placed it back at the beginning so we can advance it again. The last end of round effect would cause players to discard cards, but again, we have no cards to discard, so we just ignore that step. We've reached the end of round 2, so we shuffle all of these cards together to form a new draw deck and start round 3. That's the essence of gameplay, so let me tie up with a few other items that we can talk about. The heroes and sidekicks win if you bring the villain's health count down to 0. The villain wins if he brings all of the heroes and sidekicks' health all the way down to 0. So you don't have to have a hero in order to win. And unless you're playing with the all-evil Amazing event, you don't have to defeat the minions in order to win. However, the villain does win if they complete their mission 4 times. So in the case of Mothman, if he destroys 4 bridges. Now in this game, it's not very easy to gain a lot of cards. However, as the reminder card shows you, at the end of your turn, you have to discard down to 7 cards. So you can play with more cards if you happen to get them in the middle of your turn, but at the end of your turn, only 7. That completes the video for Let's Play Unmatched Adventures Tales to Amaze. I hope that's been helpful, but of course for complete instructions you should see the rule books. And I hope you enjoyed playing Unmatched Adventures Tales to Amaze.